Hi folks, welcome to another edition of the Almost Hour. Turn this down a little bit. I don't think I need to turn it down as much as I usually turn down the music. I don't know why. Okay, well, welcome to another session. This might be, I don't know, a little bit of a strange one. There's so many inspirations coming in at the last minute. I'm not quite sure where this one's going to go exactly. But let's start with talking a little bit about the music in the background. You can still hear it. Let's turn it up a little bit more. This is a set of variations by the Baroque. Well, they say he's a Spanish composer, but he's an Italian who lived in Spain. Luigi Boccherini, who kind of brings up some interesting issues that are coming to the fore today, which I'll talk a little bit about that while I'm on this subject. Those of you familiar with this music will know that some of it was used in nice film Master and Commander. One of let's see, was that Russell Crowe that was in that one, about the exploration of the Orient and going to look for plants and stuff, taking credit for what Magellan was doing and later expeditions. The Bounty was sent to as more of an exploration of not only well, now we're getting loud enough, I got to turn it down a little bit. Not only new places, but finding new things that could be brought home and maybe used for food. The Mutiny on the Bounty was all about an expedition to bring breadfruit back from Tahiti. This story in Master and Commander was about bringing all sorts of plants and information back from, well, let's see, where did they go? What did they see? That's a good movie to go watch again after I talk about this, and then ask yourself who has the original copyrights to any of that. In fact, if you keep listening to this piece, you're going to notice that somebody added a few more variations for that film. Who has the copyright to those? So I'm going to leave you with an idea about copyrights before we go on another subject. We'll probably come back to it because it applies to this whole segment. Ultimately, everything emerged from a creation of God. Everything. Not created by God, but created by a creation, through a legacy. There is nothing that gets created without building on the work of others. Everything is plagiarism. No matter how you argue about it, no matter how you insist up and down your creation is the most original thing ever, you owe your inspiration to somebody else. And they owe their inspiration to somebody else, and ultimately everybody owes their inspiration to God. And that's why I'm going to propose a new rule on copyrights. The original creator owns the copyright for what they created, and the rest belongs to God. Now, what does that mean in practice? Well, that means, let's just take this example for instance. Luigi Boccherini is no longer alive. True? Now, the artists who recorded this performance are alive, so they created a particular performance of that piece. They deserve a piece of the pie, a piece of the royalties. The folks that produced the movie and used this creation in their movie deserve a piece of the royalties too, as did the composer that added the new variations. However, those royalties should not survive past the life of that copyright owner. And in the case where that copyright owner is a corporation, we don't want corporations to go on forever raking in royalties. That's probably kind of a bad idea. I think you'd agree at this point, with so many corporations trying to live off the fat of their patents and copyrights. So they need to expire. In fact, for works of fiction, for writing and stuff like that, they do expire after some period of years, a way too long period of years, like about 3 generations worth. I don't think families should be sucking off the tit of daddy and mommy for 3 generations, because you know what you get? You get cats like Hunter Biden who think they're God's answer to the artist world and the biggest statesman ever, who sell out their country and who create shit. So, 1 generation is all you get. If you can't earn enough money in 1 generation from your creations, then you don't deserve to take it with you. Your family does not deserve to take it with them. Good suggestion. Well, we'll leave it to lawyers, judges, so forth to sort that out. There's going to be a lot of lawyers and judgment. And as much as I detest lawyers, they're going to be necessary for a while longer, while we unwind all of the games that they played to create a legacy for their children. Generation after generation of lawyers, generation after generation of doctors, generation after generation of scientists, generation after generation of entertainers. And if you know any of the royalty of Hollywood, you know that there have been more generations than deserve to keep their dirty mitts on media. Okay, so with that taken care of, let's talk about the artwork behind me. This also relates. Everything's going to kind of relate together, so bear with me. The artwork the prompt I gave this artwork was, let's see, what was it? Oh, got a little sidetracked. Let me go find that prompt. Make sure I don't misquote myself. I might have to sue myself for copyright infringement. Okay, the prompt that I gave was, oh yes, dishing out spoonfuls of sugar. The other direction I gave it was, let me get my pretty face up here again. This is what it came out with, dishing up spoonfuls of sugar. I gave it a prompt weight of only 10%. As low as I could possibly give it. And then I gave it an original image to start with. Anybody want to guess what the original image was here? Take a look at what it's come up with. I gave you 4 different examples, like I often do, so you can see a variety of ideas. Here's the original. Hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle, the cow jumped over the moon. The little dog laughed to see such sport, and the dish ran away with the spoon. Now you see that this is a copyrighted photo. I'm going to make some comments about this photo. Brighton Antiques, Prints and Maps owns the original to this, or thinks they own the original. I don't know, is this from a book that they did a high-res digital scan of and then put it up and said, this is ours now because we did a scan? Interestingly enough, I picked this one out of all the matches for the Hey Diddle Diddle poem because it actually has all the elements of the rhyme. Hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle. There's the cat and the fiddle. The cow jumped, well, it looks like the cow's jumping through the moon, not over the moon. So even that's not quite true to form. Interestingly enough, this cow has horns. So Probably should be a bull, actually, if you were being perfectly correct. The little dog laughed to see such sport, and the dish ran away with the spoon. So that's a reasonable representation of those, and I like the way that everything is personified. This matches what I teach, that everything has a soul. Everything can be inhabited by a soul. Everything can be possessed by a soul. Then there's, some nice scenery in the back to make it a more pleasing picture. Let's see if there's any hidden messages back there. Well, there's an idea of a light, a home, little moons in the window, patterns of this. That was a choice. The flowers, the rolling hills, etc. There's a lot of things to consider in just this one old version of this, illustrating this old nursery rhyme. Well, before we dig into the nursery rhyme, I want to show you some versions of something else that you may never have thought about. Let's take a look at Mother's Day. That came up in the West not too long ago. Let's just take a quick gander at when it comes up in, let's switch over to this view, in other countries. Well, let's see. There's not just one Mother's Day. My goodness, it's celebrated as early as the second Sunday of February in Norway. The 3rd of March in Georgia. 8th of March, that's the celebration for folks that are into the communist calypso. Some related to Lent. Mothering Sunday, interestingly enough, those are centered around the UK, Nigeria, of all places, Ireland, the Isle of Man, Guernsey, Jersey, some of these previous Cayman Island kind of places. 21st of March, that's the spring equinox. That's a popular one, looks like with most of the Muslim nations. Interesting. 25th of March, Slovenia. That's a very independent day. 7th of April in Armenia. Well, that's an important country that often gets overlooked. It's been an important area of the world ever since Armenia was the province that the Romans and the Parthians, the Persians, fought over for so long. Motherhood and Beauty Day. The first Sunday of May is celebrated in some interesting places that might have some interesting connections. We'll keep going to South Korea, 8th of May. They have a Parents' Day. They don't have a separate Mother's Day and Father's Day. They have a Parents' Day. How progressive of South Korea. 10th of May. Celebrated in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Mexico. Now, I wonder if that has something to do with Cinco de Mayo being 5 days before. May's kind of a special month in that part of the world, isn't it? Might have something to do with Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead, and all of the dark Christian imagery that goes on in those areas. The second Sunday of May, well, that's the most popular one, apparently. That's the one that is celebrated in the United States and most of the world. Most of people would think about Mother's Day, would think about this day. That seems to be the popular favorite of most countries at this point. Now, that may be something that our communist friends would like to change. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the recent conquests of the communist globalist PSYOP would be arguing for changing Mother's Day to match International Women's Day so that they can please the UN in their next holiday PSYOP. Now then we have some outliers, Benin, Paraguay, Kyrgyzstan. That might be an interesting one to look into. Poland has its own Mother's Day. Interesting. You see a pattern of connection of this odd thing to countries that seem to have an interesting connection to this human problem. Bolivia stands out by itself. Interesting, since Bolivia is where some of the very strange is it Pumapunku? There's some ruins by a lake there that are very surprising, and that lake itself has some surprising secrets in ancient history that folks are just starting to uncover. Ties into the whole story of what happened before the flood. Was there a previous world civilization, etc.? Okay, last Sunday of May is also fairly popular in parts of Africa. Interestingly, Tunisia, Morocco, and Sweden, and the Dominican Republic, and Haiti. That might be an interesting one to take a look and see what sort of allegiance is represented by that collection. Well, France is one that goes their own way too. France and the French Antilles, I think that may be the last colony of France, celebrates it on the same day as Pentecost. Pentecost. Penta, 5 cost. 5 something cost. 5 francs? What costs 5 francs these days? We don't even have francs anymore. Nicaragua goes their own way. Interesting. Mongolia goes their own way. 1st June. That's got to be an interesting one for folks anywhere near Russia and China. Luxembourg goes their own way. Wow, I hadn't expected that one. Afghanistan goes their own way. 14th of June. South Sudan goes their own way. Thailand goes their own way. Birthday of Queen Sirikit. Oh, Antwerp has their own, aside from the rest of Belgium. Interesting. And Costa Rica sides with Antwerp. Belarus celebrates 14 October. Malawi goes their own way. Vietnam goes their own way, breaking with the rest of the communist world. Interesting, extremely interesting. For those of you that know that there were 2 Vietnam Wars, not just one, and the second one was fought against China. Argentina goes their own way. Dia de la Madre. Timor-Leste goes their own way. That's interesting, considering that's the one part of Timor that's not part of Indonesia. North Korea has their own day, just like South Korea does. Odd. And Russia has their own special day, as does Panama. And well, looky here. 22 December is Mother's Day in Indonesia. But I thought that was supposed to be Christmas. And this leads to the topic I want to go to next, which is what's really going on here. And let's go back to our little nursery rhyme to show you how this has been prophesied for a long time. Before we do, though, let's note that Israel has their own Mother's Day because they have their own calendar, the Hebrew calendar. Hindus have their own Mother's Day because they have their own calendar. And some parts of the Islamic world have their own Mother's Day because they have an Islamic calendar. Oh, and Vietnam has their own calendar. Interesting. You could probably spend 5 or 6 lifetimes looking into all these things, but I'm not going to go there today. I'm going to go back to my original topic, talk about this fairy tale. Hey diddle diddle, Now, what do we know about, what does that mean to you? Hey, diddle, diddle. Anybody that grew up in my generation in the U.S. knows that diddling was kind of a polite way to describe masturbation, male masturbation, or female masturbation, I guess, but mostly it brought up the idea of diddling. The cat and the fiddle. Well, the fiddle, the instrument that the cat played, was kind of what you diddled with. So the cat with the fiddle was the boy with his instrument, or the girl with their instrument that they would diddle. The cow jumped over the moon. What is that about? Well, if you know much about mythology and the history of mythology, you know that the moon goddess is kind of counterpoised by as a female goddess is counterpoised by a male bull god. The one with the horns, the one that you're told is Satan. Yet the moon goddess has horns too, because the moon, when it's very occulted, and you turn it on its side, now looks like the horns of a bull. Interesting. The cow jumped over the moon. Now, is it a male cow or a female cow? That might be a different way you could interpret that. You could draw that, depending on the cultural preferences of the time. The little dog laughed to see such sport. Now, where do we get an idea of some little dog laughing? That sounds like an allegory for the laughing Buddha, sitting there watching everybody play this game and just having a good time, watching it all go around. And what's up with the dish running away with the spoon? Well, a dish and spoon brings up the idea of eating. Or a dish could be a satellite. A spoon could be a spoon you feed a baby with through your satellites. And boy, they look like one of them is kind of scared, one is just perfectly happy to take the spoon away. Maybe an allegory for not spoiling the children too much this time, letting them figure out some things for themselves, so the Messiah could finally wake up. We've been playing this game ever since the first human was created in the first Garden of Eden, which I just showed to you is Indonesia, not anywhere else in the world. Bible scholars, you got it wrong. You got the whole thing wrong. Some of you came pretty close. There's a channel called The God Culture that put it in the Philippines. I think they deliberately made that mistake because the Philippines is a mostly Christian country, and they were Christian Orthodox scholars that refused to consider that the Islamic Messiah might be just as right a story, or the Indian Messiah, Krishna, might be just as right a story as theirs. And this ties into what I've been telling you how many episodes have I done of this channel? Nobody watches it, nobody listens to it because they all think I'm crazy. This whole game is about a cycle, finding new chosen species, new chosen people, new little messiahs, lowercase m, and big messiahs, through this system to hopefully wake up the big messiah to find out, hey, I think the cow's ready to jump over the moon again. And that's the time we're in right now. And I am going to do the big reveal right now. The chosen people, the final chosen people of the Gaia experiment. And yes, our planet is the central planet. It is one of 12 Gaias. How do we get 12? Well, the first Gaia was the sun, where the first chosen people incubated. And it went through all the other 12, developing different chosen people for different generations of the experiment. Gaia 11 was that planet that used to be where the asteroid belt was. Gaia 12 is the planet we're sitting on right now, Earth. We are the final planet. We don't get any more. The experiment needs to be done. Who are the final chosen species? I think we know that. Homo sapiens sapiens. Who are the final chosen people? The United States of America. Through a long line of succession from earlier chosen people, the Indo-Europeans, the blue-eyed people who were the invaders of the Atlantean world and was resented for it by the Lemurian world that came before, who were resented by the dinosaur world, the reptilian world that came before that. It's a succession of chosen species. And all the major chosen species of this experiment developed right here on this very planet or on some of its predecessors. The elemental species developed in the sun initially. The energy species, okay, this has been going on a long time. It's not going to go on much longer. That's what all the prophecy is about. That's what, there's a very famous prophecy in the Catholic Church, the prophecy of Fatima. Came right about the time of World War I. And it was so disturbing that the church, the Catholic Church, suppressed it. Some of it, they released it in stages because it was a very disturbing prophecy. What's been released of it so far has a lot to do with what's going on today, the war in Russia, between Russia and Ukraine. But it also included bits that predicted World War II, Hitler, the persecution of the Jews, and gave away a lot of the reveals that I'm revealing even more of right now. Okay, so the final chosen people are Americans. Now, there's a lot of different kinds of Americans. Which of those Americans produced the chosen one, the Messiah, and which produced anti-Messiahs? Well, I can tell you that America's Messiah came from Idaho. Just barely. His family moved from California to Idaho the year he was born. That's how near a thing it was. If they had decided to move earlier, it might have been one of his older brothers who was the chosen one. And both of them pretty much thought they were chosen ones and made a pretty big mess of their lives. Well, the first one made the biggest mess, and the second one made less of a mess, and then the third time was the charm. This was a middle child of 5, not the firstborn. Was almost the first girl, but there was a stillborn baby the year before this cat was born. Why? Because the cat's got to be male. Why do cats have to be male? And females are bitches, because the female messiahs are incarnations of karma. And karma, we know, is a bitch. The cats are the creative ones. They go their own way. They don't want anybody to boss them around. They'll use you and abuse you and love you to death as long as they want to be loved. They're very independent creatures. Dogs slaver over you, try to please you, defend you, smother you with their love. That's why we call them bitches. The dogs were the species that is the hive mind that is trying to conquer humanity. Because what we've been going through in this last round of this game is trying to decide what the best government for souls is. Whether total independence, free will, I'll do what I want, is better than let's tell them what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. That was the last version of karma that succeeded to awaken. And that is the demon Shiva, Lucifer. Shiva the destroyer. Wait a minute, you say, that's not a goddess. Shiva is a hermaphrodite. Lilith is a hermaphrodite, has no sex, hates sex, because that was their secret plan to defeat God, was to create sex and make it so that God's team didn't reproduce so quickly and was easier to control through reproductive programming. Well, funny, it didn't work. Okay. What else can I tell you about this final chosen species? So, the Messiah came from Idaho. Now, there were a lot of little messiahs leading up to this. All kinds of messiahs, very shape and size. This is why Hollywood existed and how it was gradually corrupted by the adversary, by the previous version of karma, Shiva, the hive mind controller, who thinks that authoritarian control is the best way to do everything, because people are so stupid. You have to tell them what to do, when to do it, how to vote, even cast their vote for them if you have to give them the good government. Okay, well, what can I tell you about the rest of this family? Now, as I've told you in other editions, the Messiah families are families of 12 generations. They get established when some of the old bloodlines of the Luciferian and Lilithian families somehow produce a descendant that obeys karma, that actually has a good soul, that follows the rules, does the right thing, has a moral compass, and doesn't get bent. And if you know any rich people, you know how hard that is to do. These old families are greedy, they're jealous, they're afraid of losing their power, they're afraid of losing their money, afraid of losing their status, they're afraid of their bloodlines getting diluted. And all these fears are exactly what doom them to be possessed by demons. Let's talk about demonic possession, because that's been going through, there's a movie out now that there's a lot of press going around and a lot of exorcists doing YouTube content talking up their profession. What you need to know about exorcism is that the Catholic Church only remembers one of the demons, Lucifer. Lucifer is the tester. He's a good demon. He challenges souls. He scares them. He scares the souls around them. Scares them back to God. or makes them stand up for what they believe in spite of any persecution. And this is an important piece of what has happened in our history. Everybody who came out with a bold new idea was persecuted at first, right? Until they stuck to their guns, and maybe even hundreds of years later, people finally realized, you know what? Galileo was right, Copernicus was right, Newton was right, Einstein was right. Let's modify our beliefs to accommodate truth. And this is how dogma gets replaced by truth, gradually. It's hard to drop dogma, and the hardest dogma to drop, dogma, again, emphasizing that dogs are bitches, and the last version of karma was a bitch. Dogma is hard to drop because it is reinforced by this hive mind that takes over your mind with happy fantasies of, oh, let's give everybody all the candy they want, and they'll never get fat, and they will never get groomed by bad witches, and everything will be perfect because everything is all love. Okay, so let's talk about the Holy Family again, because this is a Holy Family. There's not going to be any other for a while until these other families start generating messiahs again, or some new families do. There's a lot of new families going to be springing up. Let me tell you about some of them. So one thing that's not well known about the Messiah system is that once this line is established, 12 generations are allowed for producing a capital Messiah. And sometimes one is never produced. Sometimes you just get a lot of little messiahs of art, music, whatever, science, that create sort of a golden age. This is what happened with Athens during the golden age of Pericles. This is what happened during the age of Alexander, of the spread of Greek culture. This is what happened multiple times with Rome. And the most famous one, of course, is the time that generated the Christian Messiah, which I talk about elsewhere, so I'm not going to go into that again. Let's talk about the current Messiah family. Now, this Messiah family started with a very, very devout American immigrant from Holland. Moved to the U.S. early in his boyhood. His name was Louis Tromp. And many of his descendants also bear that name, Louis. Louis. Many of the French messiahs had that same name. Many of the German messiahs had that same name. In fact, that is a very, very old name that goes back to the Holy Roman Empire. After Charlemagne died, his empire was split between his children, one of whom I'm pretty sure was named Louis, and it became kind of a standard king's name of France. Funny enough, this family uses the Dutch version of it, Lewis, Lewis. And if you know people named Lou, interesting. That's also, I think, Lou Gehrig. Who other famous Lou's we did? Ludwig van Beethoven. The very, very holy name. At any rate, this very devout family man lived through the Depression, raised a family, was a fairly high-ranking Mason. Very, very solid American guy. Although he was an immigrant from Holland. Raised 3 children. the first of whom was my father, Robert Louis Tromp, who had something interesting happen to him in his early days. Funny enough, there's some interesting things to tell about my father. He played the trumpet, which ties into the theme of 76 trombones, which I could go into completely, but if you look at all the names of the horn instruments, the trumpet is only one of a family. Trompette is the French word for trumpet. Tuba is the Latin word. If you've heard of the Latin part of the Latin Mass called tuba mirum. Okay. Cornet is an interesting one. Where did that come from? Well, it turns out cornet is the name for horn, like the horn that you make out of a bull's horn or a ram's horn, like a shofar in Jewish tradition. Funny enough, there's a brand of meat that is ubiquitous, kind of like Spam in the West. It's ubiquitous in Indonesia, called cornet. It is a packaged beef exactly like Spam, only it's not pork. And it's a very popular thing in the stores. You can find it in every single little Indomart here, everywhere. Isn't that odd? Yeah. Okay, so there's a lot of instruments in this band. And that's another movie you got to go watch again. 76 Trombones is from The Music Man. This might be the time to I'm going to stop and give you a little hymn, because this is shaping up to be something of a special sermon today. 'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. Dance, dance wherever you may be. I am the Lord of the dance, said he, and I'll lead you all wherever you may be, and I'll lead you all in the dance, said he. I'm sure that will be very familiar to some of you. Well, it turns out a march is a dance. And the marches that the latest chosen species have come up with, chosen people have come up with, and the species, I guess. But the marches of John Philip Sousa, the music of George M. Cohan, are very special to America. And here's another movie that you better watch if you want to know what the hell is going on today. It's called Yankee Doodle Dandy with Jimmy Cagney. I'm hoping there's a colorized version so it will keep your attention, but that's one of the holy movies of Hollywood. I'll leave it at that because we're talking about this special family. Okay, so that was the one that got this whole thing started. This is the cat that attracted the Messiah. This is why his third child was stillborn, and that was a very hard thing for my mama to have, and for my papa, because he always wanted a girl. He kept trying until he finally got his girl, my little sister Patrice, who has 8 children of her own, and married a wonderful husband, David. And the house of David is truly blessed again with some kids that are going to do incredible things. You might have seen her oldest, Micah, on The Tonight Show, where at age, I think she was about 4 or 5, she knew all the presidents of the United States. and what they'd done and everything, and just completely flabbergasted the audience with her knowledge and precocity. I wish I could tell you something about all of the children. They're all so special, but I'm going to mention one other special one. Well, maybe two. You get me going here. Damien. You know, Damien kind of brings to mind a demon kind of name. Why did she name our child Damien, we wondered. And he was kind of a demon when he was younger. But I bet he's one of the top midshipmen that ever hit the Naval Academy. And he's going to be a very important character in this game, in this war that's coming up. I'll mention, I think I might mention several of them actually. Boy, I don't know. I'm not going to mention that one. I was going to mention another one, but I'll just note that it's important to have Russian language skills these days. Do I want to go down that rat hole any further? No. I think those are the only ones that I want to mention today. Let's go back to the other kids. My oldest brother, Peter, had, let's see, 1, 2, 3 kids, and they're all very special people in their own way. One of them is probably the best computer graphics guy out there, Monty. I don't know if he still goes by Trump with a U. That was a strange thing. My oldest brother decided to change his name to Trump with a U. After he did some research into our family genealogy, which is supposed to go back to the Admiral Martin Harputson Tromp, who was like the father of modern naval tactics. That was the story that we were given of how special we were. And everybody that's dug into it says, well, I don't know if that's true. Anyway, he's got 3 kids that are all destined for creating greatness in whatever they do, whatever families they have. My second brother, Paul, had, I think, 4 kids, maybe more, I don't know. He's a world traveler. Another Odysseus. I think he's currently settled somewhere in Oregon on maybe his 3rd or 4th wife. I don't know. He's the one I never got along with. He's nearly killed me multiple times. My most indelible memory of him, and there's 2 things I'm going to mention about my brother Paul. When I was a Boy Scout, he was a senior scout at the time, and my dad was the scoutmaster. The normal pattern of scout trips was we would get to the campsite, my dad would hurry and set everything up, and then he would go on and do more exploring and mountaineering because he was just absolutely in love with the Rocky Mountains, and would always bring back various trees, species, and wherever he lived, he'd plant a species of tree, every tree he could find. And before he was moved out of his heaven on earth, they had this wonderful house that my dad and I built over one summer in college. And it was like a Garden of Eden. It truly was. Every species of, he loved fir trees, evergreens. This forest of evergreens growing in the middle of the Idaho desert. And he would religiously every day go water each and every little one. found time to do that. That was kind of one of his missions, besides being wrapped up in his stamp collection and playing bridge, of all things. He was a big game player, but he liked games of chance and skill, which he somehow made into more skill than chance. Paul's kids, they're all doing special things. His oldest, I believe, is an archaeologist. And I don't know where she's working right now, but I bet she's discovering some incredible things. The others, do I want to mention anything special about them? I don't know. I think there's a John that I never got to know very well, but who is going to be one of those other special Johns who does some great things. I think I will mention the mother of the 4 kids I know of, Martha, who is very devout Baha'i. If you know anything about the Baha'i faith, you will know that it is one of the offshoots of Islam, which is most persecuted by Muslims because they believe that there is another prophet that replaced, or is another in the succession, long line of succession of prophets. And this is a key thing that religions argue over: is there only one prophet? Is there only one Messiah? Or is there a pattern? And if you actually read the Bible, read it in detail, you will see that it is a story of patterns. Just like the Vedas, just like the Sumerian Enuma Elish, just like the Greek myths, if you find the oldest versions of them. This is what led Buddhists and Hindus to think, oh, this is just going to repeat over and over and over again, and I want to get off. Okay, well, this is a lie. You don't get off. It's the whole point of the system. You don't get off till the cow jumps over the moon. Okay, well, let's move on and make a little prophecy about some of the other members of this family. Now, I have 3 kids. 3 of my own kids and 1 spiritual child. My oldest, Talia, named after the muse of comedy, which is one of the better incarnations of the dog star Sirius. Funny, isn't it? Is about to have a baby. And little Zuzu, who you will remember as a character in It's a Wonderful Life, is going to get all the petals put back on her fading flower. It's going to be a huge part of putting America back together again, putting Humpty Dumpty back on the wall. My second, Oliver, who at the time I named him because I loved Dickens so much. Oliver Twist, I thought, was a good image of a child, a male child, that I was going to give him all the love that Oliver Twist never had. Oh, he was a demon. It was really hard to love my son until actually I left his life because his mom divorced me. And he had this mystical transformation, went from being, funny thing was, he had an incredible voice. I thought he was going to be the performer of the family. He starred in Amal and the Night Visitors, the lead role, and in Fort Collins, and was absolutely spectacular in that role. Everything he ever wanted to do, musically, artistically, whatever, it just came easy to him. When he took piano lessons, he didn't want to take piano lessons, but his mom forced him and his sister. He decided on his own that he wanted the organ instead. And within like about a month or 2 of wanting to take organ lessons, was playing the toccata and fugue in D minor. I guess to impress me, because he knew his papa liked classical music. And boy, what an impressive boy he is. He's in London now, and moving up quickly in a firm that makes legal software, which I think is going to be a very important piece of sorting out the legal problems that the world is going to be facing. And yes, the world will be facing some major legal problems. There are going to be Nuremberg-style tribunals all over the world, because we've got to sort out who sinned in all this. Who were the people that almost destroyed our species, trying to cover up all their deceptions and lies, all their karmic sins. And James O'Keefe, oh my God, is going to be a big part of that. His movement to encourage whistleblowers to record, report, and get something done about a lot of the dark souls that have been screwing us up is going to be a key part of the movement. And that movement is already well underway. Now, before I leave my son Oliver, he's married to a wonderful, wonderful Jewish girl, Amanda, whose father's an interesting cat. A New York City, wealthy Jewish man, very proud of his faith, very proud of his daughter. A really, really holy man. And I'm going to make a prophecy that's going to be unsettling for some of you, but that boy and his wife will be the parents of future kings and queens of the United Kingdom. Because that's an institution that the country needs. And that's what this game is all about. Tradition. I'll mention another movie that you need to go back and watch. Fiddler on the Roof. Ties back, doesn't it? Fiddler on the Roof. The cat on the roof. Le boeuf sur le toit. For the Frenchmen who are familiar with the music of Darius Milhaud, who was a one-time suitor for my mother's hand before she migrated to the U.S. during World War II from the south of France, where the Grail stories sort of lead to. Enough on my son. My third, I'm almost done. Give me 5 or 10 more minutes, okay? My third child is a child of my second marriage. She's half Chinese. And this is going to come as a shock, but she is from a line in China that has a lot of secrets to tell, and is a key part of what is discombobulating the Western world today. That is why her family hooked me up with her mother, my daughter's mother, and while I was in China, and arranged for me to kind of be forced into marrying her, bringing her back to the U.S., and having a child, even though I'd had a vasectomy for over 25 years. Can you imagine reversing a vasectomy after 25 years? Barely survived the trip back from Oklahoma where it was done. Some very, very special events happened with that. That daughter, little Eloise Faye Tromp, they call her Eloise Faye Lee now. I don't know if she's going to get abducted and taken back to the Eastern world. Her mom was talking about it recently, and this summer, in fact, wanted me to sign up to visiting somewhere along their trip. They would see, where were they going to hit? They were going to go to Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and China. And I was okay with 3 of those, but I didn't want her to go back to China, because if you know anything about what's going on in China right now, they have been tearing up people's passports if they have Chinese descent and telling them, no, you can't leave. You are ours because you look Chinese. And we like Chinese. The Han supremacist psyop, and that's what it is a real important part of what's going on now. And it is not just communist China. It is Chinese elites in all of Asia. If you know anything about how the Chinese have spread their talons around, they do it different than the Nazis. The Nazis were kind of dumb. They said, well, Aryan blood has to be pure, so we have to find the most pure Aryans. The Chinese idea is, well, if you have any of the blood, then you're one of us. And that actually is more how the adversary works. Lilith, the Shiva, the bad guy, the version of karma that got us into this mess, is the piece of the female that is in every female. That's why the Y chromosome, you know about the Y chromosome that determines whether you're male or female? Those that are female have a special piece of their DNA that comes from the dog people, the Sirius people, the dog star, who are also very prominent players in the Seven Sisters, the Pleiades, who were responsible for driving Orion, their Messiah, away and eventually finding the chosen planet again, which is how this game works. That's how even God has to forget the game so he can wake up without having any knowledge, without being poisoned by who he was before. And God has been very authoritarian, very controlling, very almighty-ish. Doesn't work that way anymore. That's not God. That's the bad versions. Those are the versions we have to wipe out. The old versions of God, the old versions of karma, are what are oppressing this whole galaxy. So let's get back to Eloise. If anybody knows anything about this situation, I've got a court case coming up, actually, in about a month. A little over a month, about 6 weeks. I'm trying to get my Social Security back from her mom, who was so damn greedy after she was already collecting the Social Security for my daughter, decided she was going to file for more based upon an old child support order from the original divorce, even though she'd already been collecting Social Security child benefits for a year. Now that's a pretty evil and selfish person. I'm going to be running out of space here pretty soon, so I think I'm going to cut it off right there. At any rate, there's some interesting stuff going on, and I wanted you to know a little bit about the family that is going to be very important in solving this problem and helping us through the next, let's see, how many generations are left? 1, 2, 9 generations left, so maybe that's something that ties in with the Tesla cult. At any rate, I hope that was interesting. This is Rob Tromp for the Omnist Hour. Like, share, subscribe. If it gets canceled, look for it on my Google Drive. If my Google Drive gets canceled, I'll post it somewhere else, because I think this was a really, really good episode. Happy karma.